You see me here first, because it is a rough ride from the west side to here at this early in the morning. I don't particularly like the committee meeting to be at 8:45, but I'm not the chair. There's 3 items, as I see, and I guess we'll hold the harbor for sure. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is consideration of a presentation on the status of management options for Ontario International Airport.
On that item, is there anybody here from Ontario? Were they invited
Not by us, sir.
to discuss their positioning or why they're taking it? Okay. All right, so let's just start this discussion. Go ahead.
Good morning, Councilman Rosendahl. Mike Molina, Deputy Director at Los Angeles World Airports.
Steve Martin, Chief Operating Officer.
We're here today to speak about where we are in 2 separate processes relative to the possible transfer of management of Los Angeles Ontario International Airport. One process has to do with our ongoing discussions with the City of Ontario, and the other process has to do with the expression of interest that was released by LAWA, and we've received some comments back yesterday, so we want to talk about both those issues.
Sure.
Last year, LAWA was invited to participate in a series of meetings with the City of Ontario at the invitation of the mayor, and
Mayor of Ontario?
The mayor of Los Angeles. Mayor Villaraigosa's office, working with the City of Ontario, have been engaged in this discussion of the possible transfer of management of the airport to the City of Ontario. We, LAWA, have participated in 3 of those meetings, the most recent being January the 12th. We have found those meetings to be productive. We've talked honestly about issues relative to the airport, agreed and disagreed about certain areas about the management of the airport. But the more important thing is that on January the 12th, Ontario city officials provided LAWA with a proposal outline for the possible transfer and management of the airport. We've reviewed that proposal and yesterday provided comments back to the City of Ontario, and we also provided comments to your offices, so you have them as well. We feel that there are still several details that need to be discussed and worked out before we take it to the next level. So at its surface, we're in disagreement or in opposition to the proposal as is, but I think we have outlined a number of areas where we can continue the discussion, and that's what we really want to do, is to continue that discussion. Concurrently with that, Senator Dutton of the Inland Empire has introduced a Senate Bill 446, I think, that would do 2 things. It would create an authority to administer the management of Ontario Airport, and it would also require the City of Los Angeles to transfer Ontario Airport to this new authority. A move that a city attorney is telling us is not legal, but we did not know about the legislation, so we didn't speak to Senator Dutton beforehand, but we are in communication with him now so that we can have also an effective dialogue with his office as that possible legislation continues.
Mr. Martin, the reality is Ontario feels that its airport is underutilized and has over the last 18 months shown a dramatic drop in takeoffs and landings and other activities as sort of their backdrop. The vice mayor called me as a courtesy prior to the state senator putting the legislation in, telling me that they were looking at the idea of an authority that would somehow coordinate this effort. First of all, give me the facts about Ontario today and maybe a year ago, or where they are and how we view that particular business center.
Okay. Ontario is set up a bit differently than LAX in terms of the relationship with the airlines. When the 2 terminals were built at Ontario, there was a lease agreement entered into with the airlines that runs through 2024, I believe. And so the airlines, sort of through this agreement, lease the terminals and pay the bills at Ontario. So it's what's called a residual deal at the airport. So as costs are fixed at the airport and traffic goes down, the average cost to the airlines actually goes up. But that's the nature of a residual deal. The airlines had a chance, by the way, to walk away from that deal about a year and a half ago after the decline, and they did not do that. And when I talked to the airlines, they expressed to me that they still like the arrangement in the long term, even though their costs were high in the short term. Regarding the traffic situation, a lot of airports that are medium hub airports like Ontario have seen traffic declines. The most notable ones that are in the similar situation, I'd say, are Oakland and San Jose, up in the Bay Area, where they have had traffic declines that are on parallel with what's seen in Ontario. So it's not clear yet whether one of three things are causing the situation in Ontario. The cost of the airport are fixed costs, much of which is labor. Second issue is just the economic situation, particularly in the Inland Empire, has an effect on it. And the third is the airlines doing some restructuring during the recession of their routes. The last two, the economy and the airline restructuring, you could argue are underlying factors because you see the same patterns at other airports like Oakland and San Jose. So it's not unique to Ontario. We had an independent study done of the options to make Ontario more efficient, so that when the economy does recover, it's better positioned for airlines to add service there. That study that we did and one also done by the City of Ontario both indicated that the costs at Ontario are higher than most similar airports. And so
There was a point when we were at 6 or 7 million takeoffs and landings there. Now we're down to what, 4 or 5?
Yep.
4.7 last year.
4.7. The chair has arrived, Madam Hahn. We're on item number 1, talking about Ontario and some of the issues there right now.
May I add a little bit to those statistics as well, sir? Out of the 36 medium-sized airports in the country, 29 of them have shown passenger decline in the last 3 years. And all of the medium-sized...
Out of how many?
Out of 36. 29 out of 36. Anywhere from a 12% to a 33% reduction.
Since when?
2007.
So what about before that? Was Ontario?
Ontario was showing slow but progressive growth for 15 years before that.
So you guys are saying you can't really blame it on management, but it's more just the economy, the trend.
I'm saying that if we look at the way the recession affected air travel, that the economy certainly is an important factor to consider when looking at the numbers.
So I guess my big question would be, we're taking a look at private management of this airport. That's what we did in RFP. We got 10 responses. And then the City of Ontario gave us sort of a separate proposal.
That's
they didn't
correct.
really respond to the RFP.
They've-
Because basically they're sort of blaming the management for the decline in air traffic, which they think impacts their local economy, their local jobs.
That's correct.
Is that what Ontario is claiming?
The City of Ontario also had a independent report done over the summer that identified that because of possible mismanagement by Los Angeles World Airports, that our focus was on other airports rather than Ontario's, that the mismanagement may have caused the reduction in passenger traffic, as well as what we were talking earlier, the cost per enplanement, how much it costs for airlines to operate at Ontario. Because that cost is so high, that could also be a factor. We contend that the factor still is the economy and the lingering results of the recession on medium-sized airports.
Why haven't we lowered the fees? Mr. Rosendahl, since he got elected, has been one-note bill on this one. Like, lower the fees. That will help with regionalization. It will, allow for the region to absorb the benefits and the burdens of air traffic. Why haven't we? It seems to me it's one easy step to just lower the fees.
Well, I think, just to clarify one thing that Mike said, I think the reports that were done, particularly the one done by the City of Ontario, point to the structural operating costs of the airport under the rules of the City of Los Angeles.
Like living wage?
Living wage.
What else?
For example, we don't contract out janitorial services. We use city employees to do those things. And that report, the one done by the City of Ontario, points to the structural way we operate the airport under the rules that the city has as being a contributing factor to higher costs. Regarding the fees are simply cost recovery fees.
So that's why we haven't
Right.
lowered
So we're trying to, the airport is structured as...
Do we break even, or
Yeah,
do we
break
lose
even.
money?
We break even.
Have we ever lost money?
No, the airline deal I was mentioning before you arrived, our contract with the airlines at Ontario, which was put in place to get the 2 terminals built, basically says we will set fees to break even. So we never lose money and we never make
Oh.
money. So it is structured as a long-term contract through 2024 with
So
the
we don't
airline.
make money, we don't,
We don't lose money. We pass our costs on to the airlines.
But it's also important to know that as LAWA management has tried hard in the last 3.5, 4 years to reduce the costs at Ontario.
how?
Staff reduction is probably the biggest. We've gone from 425 employees at Ontario Airport to about 295 today.
Yeah, we've consolidated operations, so we closed parts of the terminal that aren't in use, so that lighting and.
But again, just to break even.
Just to break even. We will neither make money nor lose money under the airline agreement.
Right. So what's the advantage of having a private management firm out there to LAWA?
I mean, I'm not sure there are advantages. That's what this expression of interest request was, is to design to say, okay, what can you, the private sector, bring to the table? We're going to evaluate the responses we got. We just got them on Monday. I do think the things that they point to is that they could generate, the private operators point to the fact that they could generate concession revenues and parking revenues in a more robust way than we're able to do.
But they wouldn't be responsible for the landing fees, would they?
Under the management contract, they would be responsible
they
for
could-
entire
so-
operation. So
They could
yeah.
raise or lower.
Right. And they would have to, under any private scenario, private management scenario, go to the airlines and sort of renegotiate the deal that goes through 2024. The airlines have been politely silent about all the goings-on and haven't said anything. And I don't know whether the
So who are these people that manage airports?
Burbank is run by a private company, just as an example. But there are a lot of companies who run airports similar to the way where you have a non-operating port, like the Port of LA has some parts that are run by long-term lease by port operators. So there are a series of companies and investment firms that run airports under contract to cities. And so.
But we would still own the
under-
asset.
Under those kind of deals, it's a long-term lease, 20.
Did the company that is managing Burbank, did they respond?
They did not. We had a conversation with them. They were worried about, I don't want to speak for them, but they obviously concerned about their primary client being Burbank Airport and not wanting to look distracted by another opportunity, so they did not respond.
And so how are you evaluating the proposal from Ontario?
I believe a letter went back to the City of Ontario yesterday.
We did. We thoroughly reviewed the proposal we put
What
together.
are they proposing?
They're proposing the authority structure, that authority be created, and that the Ontario Airport be placed within the management of the authority. And at that point, the authority would most likely go to a third-party operator to operate the airport.
How does this jive with the legislation that just got introduced?
It's consistent with the legislation in that the creation of the authority is what the City of Ontario has proposed, and
So it could happen through legislation.
the creation of the authority can happen through legislation. The transfer of a city asset, of a chartered city like Los Angeles, into an authority is still in question relative to its legality. Right now, the city attorney is advising that is not a legal option for the state of California to do, to take our asset and transfer it into an authority outside of eminent domain, which they would have that. But this is not that kind of scenario.
Have we thought about selling this airport?
Well, in the evaluation that was done of options, selling the airport was one of the things the outside guys looked at. And the takeaway was the City of Los Angeles shouldn't sell the asset, that you could get the benefits by having a private management operator without losing control.
What's the rules on the revenue that's derived from selling an airport?
It's really complicated, but it is the FAA. When you take grants from the FAA assigned to grant assurance, the proceeds from a sale would have to go to another airport within the system, so it could go to LAX or Van Nuys.
Has anybody ever gotten an exemption from that?
There's a privatization pilot program that has been around for over a decade, and
That's
I believe only one airport.
3P.
Yeah, I think only one
P3.
airport has gone through that.
And they actually got, and would an airport go for these days?
If I, ballpark estimate.
Yeah.
Somewhere 250 to $500 million.
I'm telling you, I was thinking about this driving in the car today, and I used to think, all our assets are precious, and I remember when Mayor Reardon wanted to sell off LAX. But the more I look at Ontario, we're not making money, we're not losing money. It's, we're being criticized for it. We have everybody in the world thinking they can do a better job of running it. If we could get an act of Congress to give us an exemption on that, Mr. Rosendahl,
I love it.
$500 million would solve the city's budget problem. I'm
At one point, it was
serious.
$1.5 billion to $2 billion,
Yeah, I
the
think
asset value.
I think
That was a few years ago.
I don't even think that was realistic.
But even 500 million. I mean, that, we're always trying to figure out a way to rescue the city of LA. I thought about that. I used to be hard line about not selling our assets. This one, why in the world, wouldn't we sell this to the city of Ontario? It seems like it's a great idea. I think we ought to look at that. I'd love to see some sort of an appraisal. I know there's folks out there that do this kind of thing, but I don't think it makes sense unless we could figure out how to get the revenue into the city's general fund. So if that's an impossibility, I don't think we look at. But I was thinking about that driving in. I mean, we're always trying to figure out how do we, really find a way to rescue the city, keep from laying folks off, cutting services. We have no other options. And it might be time to sell the Ontario airport if, again, we could figure out a way to get the revenue into the city. Because I just think getting a private management company, okay, that's good. Having this Ontario, authority, joint powers authority, okay, that's good, which, by the way, the legislature just might do that because they think we're taking too long to figure all this out. We're still, none of this benefits the city of LA, in my opinion.
Just so that you know, the selling of an airport is very complicated and time-consuming. The city of Chicago has been trying to sell Midway for about 4 years and has yet to close the deal.
That's Chicago.
It's very
This is LA.
and the airlines,
We couldn't even sell parking garages.
for example.
Well, I don't know. I just was thinking about it driving in, and I don't know why we're hanging on to it because, again, you just said it. We don't make money. We don't lose money. And every time we start to lose money, they raise the fees to break even. That's the deal out there, is to break even. Mm-hmm. That neither helps your regionalization plan, nor does it apparently help, increase air traffic in Ontario. So I'm just thought I'd throw that
I
out.
really enjoyed her line of questioning, frankly. And boy, we need real leadership in the House of Representatives. Let's be candid here on a couple of levels. When I was a candidate for this job, a great guy in the room here told me that one of the reasons LAX is what it is, it's the cheapest takeoff and landing fees of any metropolitan airport in the country. Is that still true?
No, I don't think that's true.
Who is lower than us of a major airport?
Atlanta,
Atlanta?
yeah, Dallas,
Dallas?
yeah.
And how about a Miami or New York or Chicago? And what's the difference in those rates?
I think we're probably close to Chicago. Miami and New York are much more expensive than LA.
But it could have been true, sir, when you were first elected. But because of the capital improvement program, we were
Yeah.
at about a
Yeah.
$11.50 cost per employment at LAX.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at that particular moment in time, which was 6 years ago, it was pretty clear that since modernization hadn't happened since 1984, the formula that helps drive the takeoff and landing fees kept itself rather low. I have been using a phrase, frequent discounted, nonstop direct frequent and discounted flights are the answer. And the way Ontario becomes that, I thought, was as we modernize LAX, we pass those costs on to the airlines through that formula, and then some of these pencil sharpened, shaded folks within the bowels of these airlines will begin to see that it's cheaper to go to Ontario than it is LAX. I know there's a market. I've met with many airlines execs, and they will admit there is a market in the Inland Empire. There's a market with Orange County from Anaheim to Ontario, Ventura County, East LA. You can now just go on your computer and punch in some stuff and find out cheap flights anywhere. And people are pretty good at figuring out where they can go. Since right now the airlines do not do nonstop direct, frequent, and discounted flights out of Ontario, it becomes a wash. And people do come from other places to LAX because it's cheaper, more convenient, and frankly, to use an expression I've used maybe 1,000 times already, the airlines don't give a damn how long it takes you to get to the gate, as long as you get to the gate. Okay? So the Southern California megalopolis all funnels into this little airport called LAX, relatively speaking, in land size, because the airlines are into profits. If I take this one step further, as we continue the modernization of LAX, will LAX and Ontario shift in that discussion, and therefore they will see the value in nonstop, direct, frequent, discounted flights. As far as I'm concerned, United, Delta, and American Airlines, the three big boys here, and some of the international, could have nonstop, direct, frequent, and discounted flights out of Ontario because the market is there. But it's cheaper to go to LAX.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well, two
Right.
things. One is all the major airlines at LAX do serve Ontario.
Yeah, but not nonstop, direct, frequent, and discounted flights around the nation.
They generally serve their hubs from Ontario.
Correct.
Second thing is once the modernization program is, done being constructed, the costs of that program go into the rate base of the airlines at LAX. And in 2013 and 2014, we expect that the costs at LAX will surpass the costs at Ontario, and there'll be a switch from the position where, for example, Bradley West Terminal and all the airfield improvements,
Sure.
the taxiways, once they get in the rate base,
Hearing that, is Ontario aware that the year 13, 14, that they will be, an incented airport, so to speak, to the major airlines?
I don't know.
I mean, that's the bottom line. It has nothing to do with our management, nothing to do with Ontario. Everybody's great. It's just that the airlines look at their bottom line, and right now it's not, from their bottom line, a good deal. Am I right? You said they've been politely silent. Have we sat with the airlines to talk to them?
Yeah, we've talked to the airlines.
And what do they tell you?
Their answer is that the demand is not there
But that's
because,
BS.
because of the economy.
That's baloney. We know the demand is there. Just go online, and you can figure out if you live in that geography. You don't need to go for an hour and a half across the gridlocked Southland to get to LAX. I talked to a lady the other day who came from San Diego. It was $200 cheaper for her to fly out of LAX in San Diego because it was frequent, nonstop, and convenient for her. That's the problem, is that they make it incented to go to LAX, and the only way they're going to find themselves able to look at it is this year 13 or 14, right?
Well, the fees from the airport at LAX will be greater than the fees at Ontario in 2014.
2014. And you have not had that discussion
How
with
much
Ontario?
greater? I mean, enough to make a difference?
Well, it'll cross over in that window, and then it'll continue. The gap will grow with time. And so LA would become at least, I would say, 30% more expensive than Ontario if Ontario doesn't even get cheaper. So, our goal is to try to lower the costs in Ontario, to lower the fees.
Right.
But now that we've committed to construction at LAX,
Yeah.
it's not reversible. I mean, it will overtake Ontario in terms of cost per passenger. The fees to the airlines, that is. How the airlines make decisions around that, we'll see when we get there.
Well, in my opinion, you should have a healthy discussion
That
with
would,
them
yeah, right. And
about that time frame and that discussion.
that would also enter into an analysis of what that asset is worth,
Yes,
Ontario.
Right.
That would make it more valuable
yes.
to someone. So
Even in-
that scenario.
Even in the capacity discussion, Ontario is extremely valuable because Ontario is the only airport in the Los Angeles basin that doesn't have any kind of constraint, either through capacity by settlement agreement or by just sheer volume of the construction itself. LAX, Burbank, Long Beach, and Orange County all have some kind of a capacity constraint. Eventually, all four of those airports are going to reach that capacity, and the only airport without capacity is Ontario.
What I'd like, Madam Chair,
Yes.
with your support, obviously, is to continue this item, bring it back, but I'd like you to have discussions and give us more information about the year 13-14, discussions with the officials at Ontario, discussions with the airlines. And we would like the airlines, I'd like to hear from the airlines themselves, their representatives, the value of LAX versus, the Long Beach or John Wayne or Burbank or Ontario, and get a better sense from the major players as to what would incent them to make Ontario, a location for nonstop, direct, frequent, and discounted.
And I'd also like to direct you to begin exploring the option of selling the airport.
Okay.
I want to know, what that would look like.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I was shocked. Okay, we're on item 2?
Yes.
Vok. Hello, Vok.
Hi, good morning. Item 2 is a continued consideration of a proposal to change the administrative code to allow the general manager of the airports to do contracts in her own right up to $450,000 over 3 years. Currently, it's $150,000.
Okay. Why is this a good idea? So currently, the executive director can only authorize multi-year contracts up to $150,000 and up to 1 year. Is that it? 1 year? 1 year and $150,000. If there's a contract that comes through for that, she can just authorize it without it going to the board.
That is correct.
This proposal is to increase that to a 3-year maximum and a $450,000
Right. The
amount.
annual.
Why is that a good idea?
That is a very good idea because it obtains us tremendous administrative efficiencies and some flexibility, but also there are opportunities for volume discounts and economies of scale. Multi-year agreements, due to their larger volumes and predictability to the suppliers and service providers, it has a potential for volume discounts. But more importantly, as you well know, in order to pay for our capital and development program, we're trying to hold down the operational cost. In that regard, we can be able to redeploy our employees who process these things to other more priority areas. So in that regard, it provides a tremendous amount of efficiencies.
So apparently there was this survey that was done in 2008 by Cage Consulting Group, and they also they said that the board's review of each of these contracts added something like 45 days to the procurement cycle, and actually made the recommendation that the board focus its attention on larger contract awards instead of these smaller ones. So it's also kind of a time issue.
That's I meant by efficiencies. Typically, it takes 7 to 9 months to process a contract through the Board of Airport Commissioners' agenda. With this amendment, it will cut down actually to between 3 and 6 months. It's actually a little more than 45 days that will be saving.
So, I mean, I'm all for efficiency and streamlining, particularly as we're trying to, modernize this airport. What do we say to those critics who would be concerned that, without the board's oversight of these, we could leave ourselves open to, fraud, waste, abuse, in awarding these contracts?
Yep.
What do we have in there to prevent that?
Well, there are about anywhere from 350 to 400 of such contracts under $150,000. 90% of these are routine maintenance, non-professional type of services. Literally, the purchase of dog food for our police canine units, services or parts for vehicles. These are extremely routine items. In fact, until about a year and a half ago, the interpretation changed by the city attorney. Most of these items did not come to the Board of Airport Commissioners. And now with this interpretation, the board is seeing these items, and they're the ones who
What are these contracts mostly for? Mostly, just, is it equipment?
mostly equipment.
Okay.
Or maintenance contracts.
Okay, so it's just
Pest
it's equipment.
control, yes.
Or how many of these would be personal services contracts?
About 10%.
Okay, Councilmember, I would let you, one of the things I would request is that maybe if we approve this, we limit it to just equipment purchases and take out the personal services, because I think that's the area where there would be most, from my point of view, a little concern, kind of awarding a $450,000 contract to someone without board review. So, I mean, equipment, I can see how that would make sense, but I would like to prevent personal services contracts from being in this new, more relaxed formula.
Yeah, I would, first of all, I don't want to vote on it today. I'd like to continue. I have a lot more questions. I don't believe in delegating power to non-elected or non-accountable officials within the context of government at this point in time. This is giving a general manager $150,000 times 3 years, which is $450,000 on issues that don't even go through the commission board. I frankly think this is just off the top. I look forward to response back, that if it takes 6 to 9 months for you to tool these things up to the commission, well, then you need to work faster and quicker and give them the picture that's clearer. And you need to outline all that. That's what we have these commissions for. Take away their authority and their power and put it in a general manager at this level is something I just want to raise as an issue to myself. I'd like to see the whole list of what we spend every year that goes through that bureaucratic process that you think is too long. That's number one. Number two, I agree with Ms. Hahn that any of these types of contracts that have that kind of an energy that she was just personal service contracts and these other things, that if we go down the road to actually do something, that definitely has to be amended within the process. But I'm not there yet to give a general manager that authority. I'm more wanting to know how you can speed it up internally. You mentioned how many contracts a year? Did you say?
350 to 400.
350 that are about anywhere from how much to what dollar figure?
It's less than 150,000, but on the average, actually less than 100,000.
It's just from my standpoint, as everybody's looking at government, I don't want to give up my power. As an elected, I'm accountable to the people, and I don't think a commission with its responsibilities as seriously as we see it should give up their responsibilities. So the first thing I'd like you to look at is how can you speed up the process of those 300 or so plus, maybe do them in groups, take it through a quick process, but let the commission weigh in.
That ain't going to happen.
To give us, to give us the appreciation of it, if we can do it. And if we can't, then make a better case why we should delegate that to a general manager, not through a commission or through the council action. I'm not saying I'm against it. I just need more appreciation of what we're dealing with before I can vote.
Okay. Okay. I was ready to vote for this with the change in the personal service and also with the sunset being 3 years as opposed to 4 years. But I completely respect your comments, Mr. Rosendahl, and I agree. We're trying to get more transparency, more accountability, more openness. But if it is a matter of, procurement, better prices as a result of this, better timing. Again, we're trying to modernize this airport, but we will be awarding, billions of dollars. and we wanted to do it right. But if this is a way that even an outside independent consulting group suggested maybe was a way to speed things up, I'm willing to look at it. But let's continue it. How much time do you need?
How much time do you need to do what I asked?
We can do this in 30 days.
Okay, 30 days, and bring the chair of the commission, and then maybe a couple of commissioners to get their energy reaction to the whole strategy going forward. I want to hear them on the record.
We'll be happy to do that.
Okay,
Great.
thanks.
And the general manager or no?
Oh, general manager, of course. I would expect her to be.
Yeah. So how much time are we doing?
30 days?
30 days. Okay. You can see why it would take 4 years to sell an airport. Okay.
Item number 3 is a contract extension for engineering architectural design services for the Berth 200 rail yard project. The new term would expire in 2015. 4 years to expire 2015.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, council members.
What do we have before us?
Mike Christensen, Deputy Executive Director for Harbor Department. What we have before you is an extension of 4 years to the engineering design contract for the Berth 200 rail yard project. This is about $110 million relocation of the existing rail yard that sits on the backside of the TrayPack container terminal, putting it towards the rear Berth 200 area near the auto handling, WWL auto handling facility. And what this will allow is the TrayPack terminal to be expanded into that area, and we construct an on-dock rail yard on that site.
Right, which is key. I mean, on-dock rail is the key to being much more efficient out at the Port of Los Angeles. Get that cargo off the ships on the rail and to its destination. Here's what makes me nervous about this project was the recent report that the Tiger II funding, the $16 million, is in jeopardy. What are you hearing about that?
It is.
I know.
We are very worried about
I
that.
am too.
Have a
What would
meeting
that mean?
Almost every day on strategizing ways of moving this more quickly. This item before you has a small element of that because as a result of that and recognizing
It's the $16 million, right?
Correct.
Right.
And it's not only that. This of the $110 million of this project, $75 million is grant funded.
Right.
So we not only have the $16 million, but also some TCIF funds.
Right. You have $8 million from, and then 51 from the Proposition 1B. Those are good. Everything's in jeopardy. You're right. Everything's in jeopardy.
Everything is
So what do you want us to know about this? Or what do you want us to do?
What we'd like you to do is, of course, send this on to council, but I think with the explanation that part of the extension was required because we had to resequence the work to try to streamline some of the construction, cut down some of the costs, and to allow us to phase this work in a manner that will give us a better probability of coming in on timelines.
What is the timeline if these funds are secured?
Part of the strategy right now, Councilwoman, is to actually accelerate some of the work under this contract and get design done.
Shovel-ready.
Which we have already, but even further within
To
the
make it more
existing
attractive
authority.
to fund?
To get this
Like
done by, design done by July 1st.
Okay.
And to be ready to put it out to bid. We had a board action at the last board meeting to go out for advanced procurement to pre-qualify construction contractors for it. And then to work very hard to
Good.
get E76 to discuss this with some of the other agencies and permitting authorities so we can accelerate.
To get who?
To get approval from Caltrans and CTC on some of the other aspects of this.
Okay. All right, well, so the recommendation is to approve this second amendment contract with J.L. Patterson and Associates.
So moved.
Okay, so moved. Good luck.
Thank you, council members.
It's vitally important,
Agreed.
vitally important. Okay, are we done? Wow, good. Anybody else wishing to address this esteemed committee? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.